We're so glad you're here. There's been so much going on, and we were hoping we'd get lots of people to tune in to our Veggie happenings for October. So come on in. We've got two fabulous speakers. We have Janet Baracco, who's going to be talking to us about planting garlic. And we have Sue Lovelace that's going to talk to us about planting things that will help the pollinators for our food gardens, both things that you should be doing this fall. So come on in, and if you could please go through and leave your audio and video off, it will help to make a better program because we won't have as many glitches and because it takes up less bandwidth. So you can, if you would like to ask questions, we would love to answer questions. And those will be in the chat box. So if you're not sure where it is, just look at the bottom of your screen and find the chat, and then you can ask questions in there. And we ask you to not ask general questions to everyone rather than targeting one person. That would be great. All of that is recorded. You can save your chat if you'd like to. And it will save the whole chat. This Zoom talk is being recorded, so if you would rather not have your name up, you can go through and change your name as well. So we are very glad you're here, and this is October Veggie Happenings. Those are my squash from last year. I just had to show you that picture, and garlic. That one happens to be called squash kakai. So we are all master gardeners, and everything we do, we try to go through and promote sustainable gardening at all times. So the first thing is that you're planting the right plant in the right place at the right time. Very important for the whole ecosystem and for you, because it'll drive you crazy if you don't. You'll have lots of other issues. We always want to nurture and protect the soil, because the soil is what gives us life. We do not use synthetic fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides at all costs. We try to, if there's anything else we can do, that's what we do. We try to provide minimum soil disturbance. So that means we try not to till the soil or disturb all the wonderful growth that's going on underneath there. We use compost and organic amendments to naturally feed the soil. We also, and Sue's going to be talking about this today, use flowers that benefit plants and the beneficial insects. And we do mulch to save water and to prevent weeds. So with that, we have our first speaker, who is Janet Baracco, and she is an herb specialist and a food gardening specialist and a master gardener. So these are some lovely pictures of her garden. Okay, Janet.
Thank you, Toby. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. As you know, my name is Janet. I live in and garden 2 miles northwest of downtown Santa Rosa. And my husband and I have been there since 2000 on a 1/4-acre lot. And we wanted to become more self-reliant by growing some of our own food. So these are just pictures of our ever-changing mosaic of diverse plantings of fruit and nut trees, veggies, herbs, berries, native California plants, pollinator plants, and a micro flock of laying hens as well that provides us with eggs and fertilizer and hilarious entertainment. But today, as Toby said, I'll be discussing, we will be considering a most essential and delicious cool weather crop, garlic. Oh boy, next slide, please. And oh look, there's Mimi telling us it's time to plant garlic. Hooray! Next slide, please. Today I'll be considering mostly the autumn and winter portion of planting garlic. So we will be talking about preparation and planting the actual garlic. In the spring, we're going to have another talk that will consider the harvest and the use of garlic. So this is the season for planting alliums, which are the onions, leeks, and garlic. Next slide, please. And why should we bother planting garlic when you can buy it in the store? Well, the main reason I like doing it is because I can get a lot of uncommon varieties that aren't already available in the store. Some of these varieties don't maybe store as well, and they're just unusual. So that's probably most likely the reason why we have, just a couple of varieties that you can really buy in the grocery, which are also very delicious, as we all know. I always enjoy early green garlic, which you can harvest early, like late spring. So you can pull some of the little scapes off, and also even the flowers, which are really nice in salads as well. And it's a great way to use your overwintering space in your garden. But please beware that garlic is in the ground for sometimes up to 8 months, 6 to 8 months. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, about the implications of that. Next slide, please. So this is just going to give you it's important to know the life cycle of our plant. It is actually a perennial, but we grow it as an annual because we want those bulbs, which are we'll actually be pulling the roots up. So there's lots of reasons, excuse me. We want to plant in October or November. I mean, you could go as late as January, but I really recommend doing it sooner than later. It does grow for 6 to 8 months. And in our mild climate, garlic overwinters quite well. So we don't really have to worry too much about that, but you will want to mulch it very well anyway to protect the soil from the rains. And once the weather warms up, maybe as early as January, with the way things are going with our climate, you will notice rapid growth. So we will talk more about that, but we'll want to maybe give that a little care. And most garlic is harvested in June and July, sometimes in May. And Toby can maybe address that later. She's quite a garlic grower, as we saw in the beginning, her beautiful garlic. So next slide, please, Toby. So we have two kinds of garlic, basically, hardneck and softneck. And the grocery store variety is the softneck variety. I think it's called California Silver Skin. And Toby may be getting one now to show us. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to have her lift those up later. But I do have a hardneck here, which is a Susanville. I don't know if you can see it in the screen. And it's a very delicious variety. Well, aren't they all? I'll read a little bit about Susanville later. So the life cycle, the hardneck is going to have fewer, larger cloves, more complex flavors, and they're easier to peel. But hey, the grocery store varieties and the soft necks are wonderful for braids, and most of them mature sooner. Some people say they have milder flavors. I don't know. That's debatable. Next slide, please. Here, garlic is an ancient plant. Hey, the pharaohs were even buried with garlic. You can find them in the ancient tombs there. So you know it's been used by almost every culture in the world and for food, but also many cultures use it medicinally. And there is a lot of science out, as by the way, if you're interested in that and looking that up as well, for medicinal and health reasons. So we are so lucky to have at least 14 varieties here in Sonoma County. And these are just a few that actually 3 that I purchased, and then from a local nursery. And then the silver skin at the top of the screen is the grocery store variety. Okay, next slide, please. So there's Buffy contemplating one of life's big questions. And next slide, please. So planning to plant, really important. because it's in the ground from October through June, sometimes July. You want to make sure that you find a bed that's going to be undisturbed for a while. And you can also plant in large containers, which like those half barrels or a big pot like we see here in the picture. And that's nice to experiment with too. But anyway, you want to make sure to arrange your garden that way, excuse me, so that it's undisturbed. And also you're going to need to limit the irrigation later in the season so that we can get those big bulbs. And we will be talking more about that in the spring, but basically you will stop the water or limit it quite a bit. Garlic needs a lot of good drainage as well. So it's important to have your irrigation and your bed set up so it can be undisturbed. And you know what I do at the irrigation, you can have these little valves that you can buy at the store, at one of your nurseries stores there. It's like a ball valve, I think. You can turn the water on and off in the black pipe, poly pipe. And I believe even the spaghetti line. Maybe somebody can address that later, but I think you can get the little valves for that as well. So that's a really good idea. So next slide, please. And soil prep is really, really important, of course, as we all know. Nice composted, good composted soil. Of course, 6 to 8 hours of full sun is pretty good, is required for almost every food crop. And garlic loves loose and very fertile soil. Those green shoots are going to need nitrogen, of course. So make sure you compost very well. I have clay soil, so I add a lot of organic matter. Okay, and I think that we can go to the next slide now.
Janet, 2 more minutes, please.
Okay, spacing is really, really important. As you can see here, I've used flour, and I also crush eggshells as markers for the 6-inch required, so you can get those big bulbs. And yardsticks really helpful as well. Next slide, please. Seed garlic is best, but you can also use the grocery store variety, and you're just going to pull the little cloves apart out of the bulb, and you want to plant, of course, with the point up. So find that little root at the bottom, and the pointy side's going to go up. I don't know if you can see that. Use your largest cloves. They're going to make the biggest bulbs. You can save the smaller ones for the kitchen. And mulch to protect the soil, of course, but from the rains. And label, label, label. Okay, next slide, please. And keep it well weeded. All onion crops like to be well weeded. They'll grow much better that way. As you see that early growth, you will carefully cultivate. You can slip in a little compost or high nitrogen organic fertilizer on the side of the garlic, side dress, but be very, very careful that you don't disturb the soil and the roots, I mean. And you want to monitor the soil moisture and drainage. As I said, it really, really requires good drainage. And I was hoping to read a couple, just give you a little taste. The Rose de Lautrec that I planted is a French Creole variety with complex flavor. It adds depth to dishes where only a small amount is required. It's pungent and sweet. That's a hard neck. And one of the soft necks, the Susanville that I got at one of our local nurseries, is called an artichoke garlic, which means it has lots of little cloves clustered in a particular way. That may be a term you'll hear, a common term for artichoke garlic. It has a long shelf life. It's one of the best kind for roasting, which is another wonderful way that you can make your garlic. Next slide, please. So you can stay tuned for part 2, and we'll be really excited to talk with you about harvesting, well, late spring care, harvesting, storage, and use. And I think we'll have a Q&A after. So thank you so much for your attention. And now I'll give it back to Toby.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to go on to our next speaker is Sue Lovelace. And if you're on Facebook and you haven't already signed up for Sundays with Sue, you need to make sure that you do that, because every Sunday she writes a fabulous blog, and everybody, I wait for her blog to come out, just to see what she's doing, and she always makes you feel great about what you're doing in your own garden as well. So here's Sue.
Thank you, Toby. Hi, everyone. Happy October. I'm here today to talk about pollinators and how we can support them in our gardens in the fall. Did you know that 80% or over 80% of all flowering plants depend on pollination from insect and animal pollinators? In the US alone, 150 food crops also depend on pollination to produce. That's pretty amazing, and that makes these guys pretty important. So who are we talking about? Primarily honeybees, native bees, bumblebees, butterflies and moths, flies and hummingbirds. Bats are also pollinators, but most of the pollinating bats are down in Southern California in the tropical areas. Okay, well, first I want to talk about planting, and next slide. When we plant, we want to focus on floral diversity, meaning all different kinds of plants in all different sizes and floral color, plants that bloom year-round, and they can be native, non-native, shrubs, perennials, grasses, seeds of annuals, cover and edible crops. Even some woody herbs can be planted now in the fall to take advantage of the rains over the winter to spread out their roots. One important thing about planting a pollinator garden is that we plant in large clusters of the same plant or species. Okay, Toby. I have a few tips for planting in the fall. We, again, want to, butterfly flew right by me. We want to plant large clusters of the same plant or species. And the reason for that is many pollinators visit the same plant in a day. And that keeps them in your garden, and also it makes it more efficient for the pollinators. In preparing, we want to water the plant really well, and we want to water the planting hole because we've had a very, very dry spell, and the soil is very dry. So it's recommended that we water the plant itself, and then when we make the hole, we fill it at least 3 times and let it drain. And then when we plant it, we're going to want to mulch and then keep irrigated until the rains start. If you see over to the right, these are some of the plants that I currently planted. They're all natives, and I really try to incorporate new natives to the garden in the fall as they attract the native insects. Okay, next slide. Here are some examples of how we can accommodate year-round bloom. If you look at this manzanita over on the left, it starts blooming around 55 degrees, and that is no coincidence that the native bees start to emerge around 55 degrees. Nature is kind of like that. The middle picture is a Rhamnus californica, California buckthorn, or coffee berry as commonly known. This plant starts blooming early spring and goes all the way through fall with blooms that are bee magnets, all kinds of bees. Over to the right, we have ceanothus, and as many of us know, ceanothus is a plant that has many colors and many sizes, all that can accommodate most gardens. So one would have to check the size, the mature size, to see what variety would work out best for your garden. Okay, next slide. Okay, here is a good example of why early blooms are so important to our food crops. These apples in the lower left, the peach and the plum in the upper right, and the berries all depend on pollination early in the year. So bringing them to our garden, have them there to pollinate food crops. Okay, next slide. I always say annuals save the day because I feel they do. Annuals bloom early while perennials are getting ready to bloom, and they can be interspersed throughout the garden. Many of these, when you plant them, you have them every year. They self-seed. Up on the left is Lacey Facilia, which is also a cover crop that benefits the soil. So instead of cutting a few off like we normally would with cover crops at blooming time, we leave some to bloom and to attract bees. The borage is an early flowering plant, as is rosemary, and attracts a lot of pollinators. California poppy and the non-native poppies like the Flanders and the Asiatic are all great plants for early pollinators. Baby blue eye, whoop, that's okay, I can go here. Okay, I was just gonna say baby blue eyes and this little aster are really good plants that come up in my veggie garden every year. Okay, next slide. Here is a cover crop, fava bean, that we would normally cut down at flowering to benefit the soil, but leaving some to flower for the pollinators and also for us later on when we want to enjoy the beans. Okay, next slide. Here are some long blooming perennials, and I'm sure many of you know more, but here are some of my favorites. Up to the left is Verbena lilacina de la Mina, which is a little native to the Channel Islands, and it blooms for us year round. Great plant. The Gaillardia down below it, blanket flower, you can see where that would attract pollinators, easy to see, and many pollinators are attracted by bright colors. Augustache in the middle, another great pollinator plant for hummingbirds and butterflies and bees. Over to the top right is Calamintha, otherwise known as the bee plant because bees are on it from spring through fall. Catmint, Nepeta fascinii, is a great pollinator plant that most pollinators are drawn to. Okay, next slide. We need to have diversity in the veggie garden. Interplant your flowers. Lots of edible flowers out there that can be interplanted with the veggies. And on the left here, we have some chives, some marigolds, tomatillos, peppers, amaranth. Many of these have self-seeded, but it's always great to have flowers and edible flowers in the veggie garden. The scarlet runner bean on the right is one of my favorite plants. It attracts every known pollinator and is beautiful too. Still just finished its bloom here in my garden. Okay, next slide. Okay, while we're in the veggie garden, let some of your herbs and vegetables go to flower. On the left here, we have broccoli that went to flower after a cool season, and tomato plants are starting up. The little daisy there self-seeds itself every year. You know, have those flowers in the garden to greet those warm season vegetables. Salvia right now is a popular herb for Thanksgiving, and letting some of it flower is not only beautiful, but it attracts pollinators late in the season. The shizu on the right, also a great late season flowering attractor. Fennel, as we all know, attracts everything, including beneficial insects. Okay, next slide. So don't forget those late season blooms. They are so important. Honeybees right now are gaining sustenance for their hives. They need the nectar and the pollen, along with many native bees. And so if we have flowers that they can draw from, they will be better able to last the winter. Over to the right is the California fuchsia. These three lower plants are natives, really good for the native insects. Okay, next slide. So now that we have them in our garden, we want to address some habitat needs. First off, leave bare spots of soil for the ground nesting bees. Many native bees build their nests in the soil. Don't be so neat in the fall. Leave debris piles. They become little homes for insects to lay over the winter. Insect hotels like the one on the right are very popular for the wood nesting bees, the mason bees, the small carpenter bees, and the leaf cutter bees. Consider water with stones and shells for little insects to sit on and sip water. Host plants for butterflies and moths. Really important. Butterflies lay their eggs on host plants, and then the eggs become larvae, and then the larvae become pupa, and then the pupa become adult butterflies. Very important. Hedgerows, strips, pot plantings, everything helps. No matter what size your garden is, you can accommodate a pollinator in one way or another. No pesticides. We already know that pesticides have caused the demise of so many of our pollinators. Okay, next slide. I just wanted to show you a few host plants for our butterflies. Local master gardener Suzanne Clark, who is a butterfly queen, gave me the picture of the Dutchman's pipevine, and it is the host plant to the pipevine swallowtail. We all know the monarch that migrates in the fall, and when they land in your yard, hopefully you have milkweed for them to lay their eggs and raise their larvae, and then go through the cycle to the adult butterfly that will be hopefully the one that migrates to Southern California or Mexico. Fennel, as we've talked about before, is a valuable plant. It's the host plant. The fennel family is of the anise swallowtail. Okay, next slide, please.
One second. Before you go on, those are the monarch, those are ones from your garden, right?
Yes, those larvae, you mean the picture of the larva?
Yes.
Yes.
And because you have a lot of milkweed and you were watching, you were able to save these guys. So there's another plus for growing milkweed.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And you can see that long as you mention the milkweed, that in this picture, it shows the tropical milkweed that we really need to cut down here pretty soon in November so that the monarchs, if we have some passing by, don't get distracted and think they need to lay their eggs on the plant. But there are several varieties of the native, which we have. The more milkweed you have in your garden, the better. We had 19 larvae this year, and I felt pretty lucky. Okay, so by addressing the needs of our pollinators, we contribute to a larger ecosystem. Think of your garden as part of a larger ecosystem. So while ensuring that we contribute to the ecosystem, we are also continuing to nurture our food gardens. So everyone, have a great fall, have a safe fall, and thank you for supporting our pollinators.
Wonderful. This you may want to go through and take a screenshot, or you take a picture with your camera before we go into the question and answers. These are some of our resources that we have for you. There's so many different articles on the things that you've just heard, plus anything else you can imagine. So that has to do with food gardening. So now we're going to go through and we're going to talk about the questions that you have. It looks like we have lots of questions in the chat. So there was a question, one of the last questions. It says, what did I mean when Sue was able to save the monarch caterpillars? So Sue, why don't you talk to that?
Well, the monarch caterpillars are very vulnerable. I will tell you that when I found the eggs on several of the milkweed plants, I brought them into an enclosure. And they went through their life cycle in an enclosure. Chances are they may have been picked off by a predator, and I didn't want to chance that since the monarch butterfly is so endangered.
And you know, if you do all these wonderful plantings and you attract the pollinators, you also attract the birds. And the birds do love to, you know, get in there and eat those worms. So if you save them, and I've gone through and saved swallowtails before as well. It takes some work because you have to keep feeding them, of course, but it's wonderful, and I'm sure you get a lot more than you would have. A lot of the photos in Sue's slides are from her garden, and she lives on a regular residential lot. Looking at her pictures and reading Sundays with Sue, you would think she has acres and acres and acres. But honestly, she packs everything in there, and it is really amazing to see what she's got there. Janet, the question is, does garlic help with gopher control?
I don't know that because where I live, I don't have gophers. Maybe
do
somebody else like Toby could answer that question.
I do know, and supposedly there's a fabulous book. It's called Garlic is Life, and it was written by a guy that lives, I think, in Occidental.
Chester Aaron was his name.
He had talked about how much, you know, that the gophers do eat the garlic, and he's lost whole beds of them. I haven't had that trouble. I have more trouble with the voles and the moles actually eating the garlic. You would think that they wouldn't want it, but it does not help with gopher control. I can tell you that right now.
I wanted to say something about the watering. If someone asked in the chat, and I noticed Kathleen Fitzgerald, or she sent out a link. Is everybody noticing that link to the University of California IPM? That there's some very useful information there. But to answer the question about watering, it depends. If you get rain in the winter, you will need to probably really watch and cut off some of that irrigation. But if you don't get the rain, then you'll need to monitor the moisture and, water accordingly. And I was wondering if Elaine or Toby might want to say more about that, because I know both of them grow garlic in large amounts. I only grow small in my residential garden. Do you have anything to say about that, Toby, about the cutting the water off?
Yeah, I definitely think it's important. And I know that this last year I didn't get as much garlic because I did, I had that problem that Janet's chicken had, is I wanted to plant everything. So I bought a whole bunch of garlic and I planted it in some beds, but as you know, you don't usually have a whole bed available. So I planted it, and you have to really think about that, because garlic really, first of all, it really does need sun. And it needs quite a bit of water, not too much, but quite a bit of water to start with.
Yes.
And so it's hard to keep it there. So if you put it in, like I put it in where I had some tomatoes and I did a couple of rows. And then when the tomatoes came out, I put in, I can't remember, broccoli, maybe something else. But then in the spring, I wanted to have that bed because that was one of my beds that gets great sun all day in the winter. It changes that how much sun you get on each of your beds, unless you're totally wide open. So it's limiting to you when you want to start in. Now, Sue does an awful lot of square foot gardening and replacing things in, and she's very good at that. I was able to go through, and on my spaghetti lines, I just pulled them and plugged them where the garlic was. It needs the garlic and the onions. Somebody had asked about the onions also.
Right. I'm glad you're you could address that if you want. Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
I found that onions need more moisture, more regular moisture. Actually, garlic does too at the beginning when they're first growing. It's going to affect the flavor. They're going to be more pungent and sharper, I've noticed, if you don't give them even a moisture at the very beginning of their cycle.
Right.
Maybe you found that too. And someone asked about those valves. Without recommending just one nursery, just find your favorite nursery in Sonoma County and ask them about the little valves that you can put on the 1/4-inch pipe.
We have a couple of great irrigation supply stores also. In fact, when you go into some of them, they're so patient, and you would think that with all the contractors coming in that your little question wouldn't be important. But it is, and they're very helpful. I even had the guy one time draw me a picture because he looked at my face and said, "You don't get it, do you?" And so he drew me a picture. I took the picture home and I did it, and it was just fine. So, but some people say that they never cut the water off to their leeks and their onions. I don't for the leeks. The onions tend to need to bulb up, and from the research I've done, they need some time near the end where you stop watering them. We have had some crazy weather though, and the crazy weather last year came at the wrong time, and we had, I think it was February the previous year, where we didn't have a lot of water, and a lot of people I found, their onions did bolt, and so we're doing some experiments this year, a couple of master gardeners and myself, trying to figure out why that happened, and we're working with a company, so we'll see.
Since you asked my comment on water, I agree you should cut back on water. I wanted to comment on something else though, as long as you invited me to comment. You can also have problems with too much water and cold. So I noticed you said you could plant until January. I would not plant in December or January if we have typical weather, because you don't want the cold and the wet together. It will rot the bulbs.
Absolutely.
I have missed the deadline to plant in fall, and I will miss it this year because I'm having some work done in my garden. So I'm fully planning on planting my garlic in February this year, but I will not plant if it is cold and wet. I will wait till we have one of those little stages where you swear it's tomato weather already in February. That's when you can plant your spring garlic.
Thank you so much for making that point, because I know one of our Master Gardener articles had that in there. But there's always, like you say, exceptions and that was so specific. Thank you. So glad you brought that up.
Thank you, Elaine. And if you'd like to learn more from Elaine, we have a group of master gardeners that work at Harvest for the Hungry that's on Yalupa. Just Google it. And on Wednesdays from 9 to 12. So if you're interested, Google that and come see us. We have a question for you, Sue, and it is on lavender. And the question is, does lavender attract pollinators? And does it dry out during winter? How do you prune plants? And can you prune too much and kill your plants?
Okay. Oh, lavender is amazing. Pollinator attractor. I was just out today. I have an all blooming lavender, and I can't tell you what the variety is. I would have to check it. It is, there are bees all over the lavender. As far as cutting back the seasonal lavender, you cut it back to the growth, but you don't go below the growth. You cut back the floral spikes, you know, to the good growth at the bottom, and that's how you cut back lavender. If you cut too low, that's not good either. And the thing with lavender is it lasts probably, oh, maybe about 6 years, and then it really gets woody. I know there's new varieties that would be an exception to that. So plan on replacing lavender after several years. But was that all?
Thank you. I think that answers the question. Thank you.
Great plant for bees especially.
Let's see. So, Janet, here's one for you. Can you lay your garden on hardware cloth or chicken wire to, I think garlic they meant. Can you lay your garlic on hardware cloth or chicken wire to prevent gophers or moles and other critters?
Well, if you did, I would use the finest kind of hardware cloth that you could with the smallest holes, because those little critters will get in there. So I believe you can do that. I don't have personal experience with that. So if someone else wants to take that question, I'm lucky in West Santa Rosa not to have gophers. So
and you know, we have gophers, but my husband does trap them. And he did put, you know, just regular chicken wire down the first year and let it stand up about this high, and then mounded and planted. And he just bought the, you know, the regular garlic from the store, and not seed garlic. And of course it did very well. So. Pam Pierce, who wrote Golden Gate Gardening, suggests not to water at all until the garlic sprouts. Do you also recommend this, Janet?
I would not. You mean, does she mean the first green growth?
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would not. I mean, unless it's pouring rain and it's just soggy.
Right.
I think even watering would be, that's what we would recommend.
Right.
Unless someone else has something to say. I think it depends on, you know, if it's raining or not.
Yeah.
And you know, and you can put it on drip too, but then you just have to watch. Yeah, so I'm wondering if maybe she, you know, depends on where she is gardening and what she was talking about, what type of soil too. Again, I have clay soil. If you have sandy soil, you know, again, it kind of depends on where in the county you are, and you know, monitoring your water, if it drains well or not.
That's right. And I think consistent is the big tip. So, and Penny also said the Seed Savers recommend making a small U-shaped trough from gopher wire and planting your garlic in it. And that's a great idea too. So let's see. And it was also added that depends on how moist your soil is when you plant. But there again, you don't want it to dry out in between. So here's a great one. It says, I'm a beginner gardener. I would love information on how to start a garden for dummies. I've been doing veggies in pots on my deck, and they started out great, but over time didn't ripen, and I had a lot of waste this year. And you know what? A lot of that, I think, is timing and making sure you get it right. And when you have things, and depending on the size pots too, but it's mostly getting it in the ground at the same time. I highly recommend that you go onto our website, and they just went through and put the link up there again. Normally we have workshops in person at 3 different gardens throughout the county in fall and in spring. Right now, like I said, we Harvest for the Hungry is open. There are some protocols that you need to know before you come and work on Wednesdays from 9 to 12. And mostly they're COVID type issues. So you bring your own gloves, you bring your own pruners. It's a wonderful place to learn a lot. So if you're interested, you might just, email us at that contact and we'll give you some more information. But I think it's a great place to learn, how to do things and tune back into Veggie Happenings again. So let's see. Oh, good. There's a first document to read for new gardeners. One thing, let's see, looks like we've got it. One thing I wanted to add to Janet's was, aside from living in Gilroy for 30 years, and my husband was working in garlic for 15 of those, I'm not the greatest garlic braider. This is the soft neck garlic, and soft neck garlic is, you can see some of it's purple, and the tops are pliable so that you can go ahead and once you let it cure, then you can go ahead and braid it. But this is hardneck garlic, and like Janet said, the hardneck garlic has bigger cloves. I don't know, it's just easier to peel, and all of the fresh garlic to me that you get, I think it's a little harder to peel, but you can get some really delicious different kinds. But on this one, you can go through, I just got this off the internet somewhere, as far as how to do it, but you just tie them together in the back. And then, they said to add lavender. We have lots of lavender you sort of mask those. But I do this with all the garlic, and then I hang it in the garage. Our garage is sort of underground. And then you can go through, and I hang the current ones up in the kitchen, and I use them right from there. So try to not, have it in the sun. But
Toby.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, as far as the new gardener, our website is full of new gardener, all kinds of information. And then on our Facebook page, there are article after article on food gardening as well as general gardening. Penny on Wednesday, myself on Sunday, and Carla on Thursday, all are talking about food gardens. And I would welcome any question, and I know Penny and Carla would too, in regards to growing for the first time. We also have great videos on our website about growing food gardens. So I would encourage, it's great with people starting out, to start small, but keep expanding as time goes on.
Yeah.
And just know that when you're starting out, it's all, everybody doesn't, we have failures every year, all of us. And the reason I'm doing this work with another master gardener who wrote the article on growing onions is because both of us had bolted onions this year. I have a lot of dehydrated ground onions because they bolted. And so just know that you're remembering why you're growing this food. It's good for the environment. It's good for you to eat. It's nutritious. So don't give up and, add pesticides or do something to make it a little easier in the short term.
Can I say something to everyone? A lot of people in my neighborhood, I live in suburbia here, and there are a lot of first-time gardeners. And so, lots of mistakes. I make tons as well. I see them doing, I got so many ideas from them, just looking how they were doing things. But the one thing for me, when you get overwhelmed, is just think what you like to eat and maybe make a list that you and your family like of 5 vegetables that they like. And then learn the cool and the warm weather crops in your area. And if you just start, because some people will ask me, well, why can't I grow basil right now? And I'd say, so because I know that basil is phasing out because it's a warm weather, but if you, that helps me right there. So if you know what a warm weather crop is and a cool weather, and just sort of generalize. But as Sue's saying, and Toby, they know so much, and go to the websites they're talking about, but don't get overwhelmed.
That's
Just
right.
get hungry. It'll help.
Right. And I think one of the best documents that we have is it's a listing of food gardening in Sonoma County, and it's very specific on when to plant. So it's great. So just want to remind people that this video and the other veggie happenings that were for the other months are posted on our YouTube channel, and you can look for that in the chat, or you can just Google it. All right, well, thank you so much for coming. We totally appreciate you spending your lunch hour plus a little more with us. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in November.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.